We begin in 1991, the year the USSR collapses. The Soviet republics declare independence, Ukraine among them. In a referendum, over 92% of voters choose to break away. What follows is a decade of fragile balance. In 1994, Ukraine gives up its Soviet nuclear arsenal in exchange for guarantees. Russia, the US, and the UK promise to respect its borders. In 1997, Russia and Ukraine split the old Soviet Black Sea Fleet and sign a friendship treaty pledging mutual respect for territorial integrity. On paper, the future looks cooperative. Eastern Ukraine holds rich coal, minerals, and some of the most fertile farmland on Earth. Russia holds something else, the gas. Nearly half of Europe's gas flows from Russian pipelines, and most of them run straight through Ukraine. That single fact, who controls the pipe, will shape everything that follows. In 2004, Ukraine's presidential election splits the country in two, a pro-Western candidate against a pro-Russian one. The pro-Russian candidate wins amid accusations of fraud so loud the Supreme Court orders a revote. This time, the West-leaning candidate wins. Ukraine turns toward Europe and NATO. Moscow's response is economic. Gazprom cuts Ukraine's preferential gas rate. Russia starts building a pipeline under the Baltic Sea, a way to sell gas to Europe while bypassing Ukraine entirely, and the transit fees that come with it. In 2008, NATO signals that Ukraine could one day join, but not yet. That winter, a gas price dispute leads Russia to cut deliveries altogether, rattling all of Eastern Europe. By 2010, the pendulum swings back. A pro-Russian president wins, extends Russia's lease on the Crimean naval port to 2042, and passes a law elevating Russian as an official minority language in the Russian-speaking East and South. Then, in late 2013, that president refuses to sign a long-negotiated trade agreement with the EU. Kiev erupts. The protests in Kiev's Independence Square, the Maidan, spiral into an uprising. Roughly 100 people are killed. The president flees. Parliament removes him from power. The very next day, lawmakers vote to repeal the minority language law. It never takes effect, but the symbolism is enough. Russian-speaking regions erupt in anger. Then, in Crimea, men in unmarked uniforms, later confirmed by Putin himself to be Russian soldiers, seize the parliament building and the airport. Within a month, Crimea declares independence. A contested referendum claims 96% support for joining Russia. Putin annexes the peninsula. The world reacts. Sanctions hit Russia. It's expelled from the G8. But the fire spreads east. In April 2014, separatists declare the Donetsk People's Republic. Weeks later, Luhansk follows. Fighting breaks out between Ukrainian forces and separatists backed, Russia insists at first, only by volunteers. In Odessa, deadly clashes between rival factions leave 48 people dead in a burning building. No one is ever convicted. By autumn, a ceasefire, brokered with French and German support, mostly holds. The front line freezes. But underneath, the pressure keeps building. New Russian pipelines bypass Ukraine further. A bridge rises across the Kerch Strait, connecting Russia to Crimea. And in 2018, Russia blocks that strait entirely, ramming a Ukrainian vessel and seizing 3 ships. In 2019, a new Ukrainian president takes office promising peace, Volodymyr Zelensky. He secures the release of the captured sailors. But he also keeps pushing for NATO membership. And for Putin, that is a red line. Russian troops began massing on the border. By early 2022, roughly 190,000 soldiers surround Ukraine from 3 directions, with more in Belarus to the north. On February 21st, Putin delivers a speech laying out his case. Ukraine, he argues, was never truly its own nation. Its borders were drawn by Soviet leaders who made historical mistakes. He accuses the post-Soviet government of corruption, of harboring far-right extremism, even of genocide against Russian speakers. He recognizes the separatist republics as independent states. 3 days later, on February 24th, he announces a special military operation to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. The plan is built on speed, 4 simultaneous fronts: south from Crimea, east from the separatist territories, from Belgorod toward Kharkiv, and from Belarus straight toward Kyiv, where Russian forces aim to seize Hostomel Airport, fly in reinforcements, and capture or kill Zelensky within days. It doesn't go as planned. Ukrainian troops disable the airport's runway after fierce fighting, stranding Russia's planned airlift. A massive armored column crawls toward Kyiv, but stalls for days on a single road. The capital holds. The world responds fast. Sweeping sanctions, frozen assets, a scrapped pipeline project, closed airspace. Elon Musk activates Starlink to keep Ukraine connected. Inside Russia, protests are crushed, and a new law criminalizes false reporting on the war. In the south, Russian forces seize Kherson, Melitopol, and Europe's largest nuclear plant at Zaporizhia, but Kyiv holds. After a month, Russia changes strategy, pulling back from the north to focus on the Donbass. In the town of Bucha, Ukrainian forces uncover a massacre. Russia denies it, then later honors the brigade accused of carrying it out. The war becomes a grinding stalemate. Mariupol falls. Bakhmut becomes a meat grinder, literally. That's the term Wagner mercenary leader Yevgeny Prigozhin uses for his tactic of throwing wave after wave of recruited prisoners at the city. Ukraine, low on ammunition, receives its first Western weapons and launches counteroffensives, retaking over 10,000 square kilometers in the north in a single week. Putin, under pressure, orders partial mobilization. Hundreds of thousands of Russians flee rather than fight. Russia claims to have evacuated 2.5 million Ukrainian civilians, including over 400,000 children, a policy of forced displacement that will later lead the International Criminal Court to issue an arrest warrant for Putin. Hastily staged referendums in 4 occupied regions deliver predictable results: annexation. Ukraine retaliates by damaging the Crimean Bridge. Russia responds with mass strikes on Ukraine's power grid, now using Iranian drones. By November 2022, Russian troops withdraw from Kherson. The front stabilizes, Russia holding roughly a fifth of Ukraine. In May 2023, after staggering losses, Prigozhin's forces finally take the ruins of Bakhmut. Weeks later, he turns his mercenaries against Moscow itself in a short-lived mutiny, halted just 300 kilometers from the capital. By August, he's dead, killed in a plane explosion. Ukraine's next offensive stalls against deep trenches and minefields. The front freezes again. Both sides adapt. Cheap, explosive-laden drones, worth a few $100s, start destroying multi-million-dollar tanks. Ukraine naval drones force the Russian fleet to retreat from Crimea entirely. In August 2024, Ukraine launches a surprise cross-border offensive into Russia's Kursk region, a bold gamble to ease pressure on the Donbass and gain leverage for future talks. Putin responds by calling up more troops and accepting reinforcements from North Korea. In January 2025, Ukraine stops gas transit to Europe altogether, shifting toward American liquefied gas instead. Then Donald Trump returns to the White House, and the dynamic shifts again. He halts military aid, opens direct talks with Russia without Ukraine or Europe at the table, and pushes Kyiv toward a deal over its mineral wealth. Zelensky wants security guarantees first. Trump even proposes the U.S. take control of the Zaporizhzhia plant. Zelensky refuses to cede any territory. Meanwhile, Russia retakes Kursk in full, and falling oil prices, driven by Trump's tariff threats, squeeze the Russian economy further. As it stands, there is no ceasefire. Russia wants its annexations recognized, Ukraine kept out of NATO, and a change of government in Kyiv. Ukraine wants its troops back, its land intact, and real security guarantees. The U.S. wants minerals, infrastructure deals, and a slice of the reconstruction, estimated at €500 billion. The cost so far is staggering, likely over 100,000 Russian soldiers dead, tens of thousands more Ukrainian, and roughly 10 million Ukrainians displaced or in exile. What began as a dispute over a pipeline and a peninsula has become the largest war in Europe since 1945, and its ending still is unwritten.